Okay, good morning, everyone, or indeed good afternoon if you happen to be in France, like our guest today, Clémence Krzentowski. It's so good to see you, Clémence. Welcome to Design
Good to
and
see you.
Dialogue. Yeah, so Clémence obviously comes to us from Creole Gallery in Paris. Just a few announcements before we get going. First of all, you are muted unless you are Clémence or myself, and that's just to preserve the audio quality of the interview. But if you do have questions for us, and I hope that you will, please put them in the chat box over on the right-hand side there, and we'll get them back to them at the end of the interview. Also, do know that this is being recorded and will be available afterwards forever as an archival document. So that will be on the Friedman Benda website after the fact. And if you would like to let us know where you're calling in from, also please put that in the chat. We always like to see that. And with that, I am done with my prefatory remarks. So Clémence, hello.
Hello.
It's great to see you. I hope you're well. We see that you're in the space or one of your spaces there in Paris.
Yeah, as the lockdown is now in Paris, I thought it would be nice to be inside the gallery because we are closed and we were shooting today, so it was possible. So yeah, good morning and good afternoon.
Yeah. Well, we have to express, concern and obviously best wishes for you and your staff during this period. It's rough here too, but I know that Paris is dealing with another wave of the virus, so we certainly hope you all stay well and healthy. We thought that we might start the interview just by talking about what Creo is. We've had only 2 gallerists or dealers on the show before, those being Marc McDonald, former 50/50, and Jeannie Greenberg of Salon 94. So very different figures. Of course, Marc McDonald mainly using his knowledge of historical material as a way of building his enterprise. Jeannie Greenberg, obviously very active in fine art as well as design, with a long personal history going back to the 1960s and 70s of minimalism and the avant-garde. So I wonder if you could share, Clémence, your perspective on how you came into the world of design, and also the kind of prehistory of Creo and how it began and sort of what it is, because it's a bit of a complicated entity in some ways.
No, actually it's quite simple. Everything came and we started, my husband and I, Didier and I, more than 20 years ago now. Actually, it's 21 years this year. But it's a little bit longer than that, because before having a gallery, we had an agency working with the same designers, but for industrial projects. So the idea behind the agency was to actually convince industrial companies to ask the Bouroullec or Marc Newson or all the designers we were working with at that time to ask them to actually work on industrial projects instead of asking a design team or a design studio or a design agency, maybe to ask somebody who was completely fresh, completely out of this world in a sense, and would bring his vision to the projects. So that's how we started, and I think it's important to understand this, because to us, design was really a key thing, in a sense that in the meantime, but personally, Didier was always a collector, and we were collecting art as well. And to us, it was very clear from the very beginning that there is a key thing, a key difference, which is the use. You use a table, you use a chair, you use a light, where you don't use your work of art, or at least not functionally. So it was very important to us to consider that. And actually all the designers we work with, they all have 2 activities. One is industrial, and they will work with Samsung, with Apple, with Sina, with Vitra, with IKEA, with Hella. And then at the gallery, they will do something completely different. So the very simple idea of the gallery was to be this kind of a space where the designer can really express them very freely, complete freedom. So if you work for industrial companies, you have a brief, you have marketing specifications, you have a planning, a budget, and so on. With us, the idea was just like, be free, do whatever you want, as soon as it's something new and interesting, and maybe push the boundaries, experiment, and yeah, that's really the main idea. You work on an industrial part first, but then also at the gallery you can do whatever you want and maybe express things that are more personal, for some people more artistic, depending on what you want to say, but really take the time. Time was also a key element. We never say we want this for next year. It's just like when the designer comes to us, to Didier and myself, with a new idea, a new project, it's really much more about the idea itself, the concept itself. And then if we like it, then we develop the thing, we produce the pieces that we sell at the gallery. So I think it was important to say that because I guess we are almost the only ones, the only gallery doing this. I mean, having designers really working truly for industry and truly for the gallery. You have a lot of designers who only work with industrial projects, and you also have now some designers working only for gallery projects, which means also working for clients. For us, it's kind of different, and we feel that the balance between the two is key. Because if you only do industrial projects, it's kind of frustrating not to experiment, or in a moment like the moment we are living in now, to be able to continue to develop your things. So it can be frustrating. And on the other hand, if you only work for gallery projects, sometimes you can maybe, how can I say that, maybe please a little too much the clients and not continue to think. So, so the balance to us is really key.
Well, also, of course, the channel of the industrial commissions reaches a very different audience and a much broader audience.
Completely.
On the other hand, the gallery work, what you're doing with the designers, is like an intervention against that background of industrial production.
You're right, then, but I must say that there is something also interesting is how people reach out and how a project, even if it's for a gallery, can actually sometimes with the image, with the social medias, with everything that we share, can be as strong as something that is really massively produced. If I take the Bouroullec brothers, some of the very first pieces that we produced at the gallery were seen everywhere, and were, I think, very important in the way that people understood the relationship in their work, for example, between architecture and design. Because maybe as they were free and as they could express exactly what they wanted and not answering a brief again, it was maybe stronger to, or maybe even more obvious in a sense for people and to understand them very obviously.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense and is a very clear statement of what the gallery has been doing. Maybe we should look at some images and see what it actually looks like in practice. What we've done is there's so much that we could show. So this is just really the tip of the iceberg, we should say. Hundreds of exhibitions and projects over the years, as you said, 21 years. We might just begin with this lovely image. So there's Didier. And would you like to say just a little bit about how the two of you work together and whether you have specifically different roles in the gallery?
Sure. We're super, super different. If my husband was here, he would say, look, I'm inside the gallery, but I have no office. So it's always, Didier is really somebody who loves talking with the designers, treasure hunting his lights. He's always been more passionate about creation than anything else. And when I was talking about the agency, I must say that he was never very keen on marketing people and so on, but always on the creative side. So, so yeah, but it's true that when we started this adventure together, it was much more than, how can I say that? it was just an idea. We never had something in mind very precise of what we would do. We never thought that we would produce one day, and it came very quickly, actually. So the idea was much more that we were interested to have pieces inside our home that we found close to the way we were living. And it's true that a lot of pieces, even if they are super beautiful, as you see them, not everywhere, but in many, many places, sometimes it's kind of difficult to have them, not difficult, but maybe to have them home, it's maybe less personal in a sense. And so it's true that we were always trying to find, you know, old vintage pieces that would have a lot of charm, and that we were also aiming to have contemporary pieces. When we met and when we got married, we ended in this apartment where we still live actually, and we decided not to bring anything, but to just buy things new, and that's how actually we bought our first desk by Jasper Morrison at that time, 30 years ago, and it was just like, yeah, we tried to find contemporary pieces that would be in dialogue with the art we liked, because it was very contemporary and very young. And so, yeah, that's how it started in a sense, because we wanted things and we couldn't really find them. So we were just like, well, why not trying? And we thought that maybe the people who would be interested would be so few. So we had this very tiny, and it was in parallel of the design agency that we had. We had this very, very tiny space inside the 13th in Paris. Well, actually not this one, that's the second one. The very first one, we don't have that many images because it was just like a very short time. But Didier was spending all his time in this area in Paris at the very east end, where you had very young contemporary art galleries. And at one day he forgot his phone in this street, and one of the gallerists, I think it's Emmanuel Perrotin or Jennifer Flay, who is now leading the FIAC fair in Paris, who said to Didier, look, there's this small space here, you should, as you're coming all your days here, you should open something here. And so he called me and said, you know, Clemence, why not open a space, and I would sell, you know, some pieces of our vintage collection, and that's how everything started. And actually we realized very quickly that a lot of the clients of the collectors of the other contemporary art galleries were super interested, and that they loved what we were showing, even in this tiny, tiny space. And we showed Marc Newson, we will see afterwards, and Ronan in this space. And very quickly we realized that actually a lot of people were interested, and so we decided to open a larger space, and that's the larger space that we're seeing here. And this is actually the very first show by the Bouroullec brothers. When we met with Ronan Erwan was still at school. It's a very long story, very beautiful story. And this one, we loved this show. It was in 2001. And here you see exactly what I was telling about this kind of relation to the space, the work between architecture and design. You see this large parasol, this kind of umbrella with light inside, this huge vase, which was actually on the beautiful ad for the princery for the Design Museum show in London with Alice Rostern at that time. Oh. And at the very back, the TV vase that adds some light inside. Since this moment, we've been collaborating very closely, super proud and super happy of this collaboration, of course, and friendship. And it's, so yeah, so this is 2001. And
then we've already mentioned Marc Newson a couple of times, but he's so important to the early history of the gallery, of course.
True, and here it's not the first one, because the first one was in the very small space, but this is in the second space, and you see at the back of the photo the Lockheed Lounge and the pot of drawer, and you also see, yeah, exactly, and you also see the Event Horizon table and the Alufeld chair, which were made by people from the Aston Martin cars, really with this, and actually here it's really beautiful because you see, to me, very iconic references to Marc, meaning the cars and nature. You have the wicker, the same shape of the wicker chair, and then the Alufeld, of course, made out of lacquer and completely by hand, by people who are making cars exactly in the great tradition of the car making, completely by hand and then lacquered with bright colors. This one is a Ferrari red lacquer. So here, yeah, you see that these kind of pieces, they couldn't exist in a regular life in a sense. It's really something that you wanna dream of and you want to produce. So yeah. Here it's a good example of these gallery pieces.
Yeah, and you know, the impact of this body of work, or this period of Newson's work, has been so tremendous. The pot obviously is in the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, famously, with the André Gros cabinet that served as a sort of inspiration for it. And then the Lockheed Lounge is a story unto itself in terms of how it created a kind of different market for design and became an emblem of that period. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that and the sort of galleries. Well, did it change things for the gallery, that kind of secondary market for design, and just the kind of intensity of the interest that was being generated around this work?
Yes, of course. At that time, I must say that was primary market. So it's different. I think it's also a link between about the limited edition pieces. It's true that maybe something that we did since the very early shows was to have, as the pieces we produce, we leave the designers completely free. We never exactly say how long it's going to take to do the show. And we decided, Didier and myself, because it's expensive to produce this kind of pieces. Sometimes it doesn't work, so and sometimes and most of the time it works, and we're happy about this. But meaning that it's important, I think, that if you start spending some money, at one point it's really complicated not to know how many pieces there are. If you begin to be a collector, and exactly the same in art, of course, or in any field anyway. If you only have one piece, 10 pieces, or 100 pieces, or 1,000 pieces, of course, the value of the piece is not the same. So we decided clearly, because the pieces were special, but again, special by nature, because we were allowing this freedom and this possibility of production, that it was important to reassure, in a sense, and to say, okay, there will be 12 pieces. We didn't know at the very beginning how many to do, and we followed the sculpture numbers: 8 pieces, 2 APs, and 2 protos. So that's what we did for almost all the pieces of the gallery. Sometimes we have less, sometimes we have more, but let's say 80 pieces are limited editions like this. And I think it's also why, apart, of course, and along the fantastic talent of Marc, that people realized that there were very few pieces like this, that they were exceptional in the making. And that's how also it's important to be strict on this. You can't say it's a limited edition, because everybody does limited editions now. You see what I mean? If you just take whatever piece and then you put it in gold or whatever, or with flowers, and then you say, oh, this will be a limited edition, to us it has no interest. The limited edition is not because you want to say it's a limited, but because the nature of the piece is like this. You can't do 1,000 Lockheed Lounge. You see what I mean? Because it takes I mean, super long time to make it. It's completely by hand. Same with the Alufelt, same with the Event Horizon. I remember when we had the shop top tables some years after that, it took something then 4 years to deliver the pieces. Mm-hmm. So of course, this is important. And it's true that with Marc, it has changed maybe the perceptions, because it was maybe the first time that, that the Lockheed was put in an auction cell inside a contemporary art auction, and not in a decorative art sector. So yeah, people just realized, and I think a lot of art collectors maybe were interested in finding pieces that could also dialogue with their art and bring something different.
And hold up to the juxtaposition as well, to compare with an equal strength. This is such an interesting topic. I just want to ask you one more question about it. It's fascinating that you were thinking about sculpture editions, and I also think about printmaking as another fine art practice where you have a very definite, not a limited edition in a kind of soft sense of the term, but a very precise number. Was that also because you had to make more than one? Because once you had invested in creating that object, it was so difficult to get over that hump that you needed to make at least, 3 or 8 or 12 for it to actually make sense to do that?
Yes, of course. It's also because I think even if it's not a lot, you want that the piece to exist. If it's one, you basically never see it. You see what I mean?
Right.
So it's a pity. And it's true that throughout a show, we never do one piece. Usually we produce between, let's say, between 5 to 12 pieces, I would say, roughly, averagely. And so you have more. You see what I mean? You really have a part of this history that the designer is telling. So, so yeah, that's why we wanted to do this kind of.
Okay. So it's partly economy of scale, but it's also about visibility for that.
Yeah, firstly, the nature, the production and the way it's created. And secondly, exactly the fact that it would exist and would allow also the gallery to continue.
Yeah. Had you seen, I'm just going to go on to this image of Marc's as well. Had you seen any other design galleries working in this way previously with this kind of edition model?
Yes and no. We were friends and we knew very well, the founders of Neo 2 Gallery in Paris. And they were producing some pieces, not producing others. They were not limited. You didn't know how many there were. So yeah, I think in this way we were the first to do so. But it's true that again, for Neo 2, the nature of the activity of the gallery, even if we didn't know how many there were, I guess it couldn't be more than hundreds. You see what I mean? It would never be thousands. So we have a rough idea of the thing. And that's fun because you're showing this, that's our invitation cards. And at that moment, at the opening, we asked a graphic designer. He was very young at the time and very super famous now in France. His name is Laurent Fétis, and he decided to do some cards with a background with a color. So each year is a color. So I think it's 2000. No, it's 2000 actually. It's the year 2000. This one, and that's the 7th show. You always have the number of the show, and each year we have a new color, and we love that because the people actually collect them, keep the cards, and sometimes ask for some numbers.
Different kind of collector's item, yeah. And we'll see the numbers increase over the course of the PowerPoint as well. But it's a very distinctive look for the gallery. I'm not sure how many people realize that you actually work with Alessandro Mendini, may he rest in peace. but this is another early project. We can see number 14.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific recollections about him? Because he's somebody that's of particular interest to me as a thinker as well as a designer.
Completely thinker and absolutely wonderful person. Each year Didier was visiting him before, when he was going to Milan to the Salone, he was visiting Alessandro. That was his first stop. So we were close, and we always considered that he's, I mean, I don't like the word because everybody says that, but he's a real genius. and this was very particular for us, this show, because it was not only Mandini, it was Dan Friedman and Alessandro Mandini. And Alessandro actually proposed us this idea because it was a show that they dreamt, and they've been writing to each other about this show. And actually, Dan Friedman died before it was possible to produce it. So Alessandro asked Didier and myself to produce the show and to do it because he had every details about all the pieces they wanted. And so we did it. So you clearly see on the double dream, it's called dream, the double dream, because you have dream and dream on each side, that it has this famous juxtaposition of graphic design and furniture, and we love this show.
Yeah, and if viewers aren't aware of Dan Friedman, he's definitely somebody to look into. He did die far too soon, too young, but one of the great geniuses of 1980s and 1990s design for sure. Yeah. You know, you've talked a little bit already, Clemence, about production and the gallery's involvement in actually making the work. And I wonder if you might say a little bit more about that, maybe in reference to Hella Jongerius. She's a great example of somebody who works in lots of ways with brands, of course, with companies, KLM. We interviewed her on the program. She spoke beautifully about that. But I take it that when you work with her in the gallery context, you're also helping to actually get the work fabricated. Is that right?
Completely. It's, you know, it's sometimes for all these pieces, actually, we produce them, except the vases and the flowers. Because obviously she made them. Working with the Hella is always such a pleasure. She's so brilliant, and it's here. I really like these two images because it's really a summary as well. You know, she always deals a lot about the relationship between the users and their products. And here this kind of emotional part is important as well. And the way, of course, the frog. And I was very happy to see Jeannie's one when you did the design in dialogue with Jeannie Greenberg as well. So yeah, the frog and the turtle and the snail afterwards. They were pieces that you can actually use as you saw. It's a table. You can't really see because we cut the image, but it's a table in walnut wood, and partly this huge frog jumping on the table. So it's almost 1 meter high here, and it's really about this relationship that we have, maybe more effective. Of course, she also did for us what she called the office pets. So really the kind of animal that you could have and bring something different to your working environment. So yeah, Hella is really special. Following her work in depth is key to us. Her use of color that you see here, but maybe if you have the other image with the turtle, you see it as well. And here, to do this turtle, we actually make a huge block of layers of wood and resin in different colors, in different finish, and then it's sculpted inside. And then you can use all the flat parts to put a cup, a glass or whatever, your phone, and you have a large cup that you can use as well on the back of the turtle. So, so yes, good example, and the vase on the right photo. So they are very iconic shape of Hella, you know, the group bottles, of course, it can make you think of this. So again, two different materials that you don't see much together, the glass and the ceramic. And inside, what she called artificial flowers. So the flowers are made here in leather, in paper, in glass, in porcelain, all with embroideries and special stitching. So it brings your imagination somewhere else.
Yeah.
He likes that I think that objects play with the imagination of the users.
And you know, with Jongerius, you also have a designer who's so acutely interested in materiality and craft and production. But I guess I wanted to ask you to just say a little bit more about what it means when you say we produce the turtle, we produce the frog, and we can see the incredible quality of the fabrication as well. Does that, not specifically with Jongerius, but in general, does that mean a lot of different artisan workshops that you're coordinating around Paris or beyond? How does that work?
Completely. When we started the gallery, because we bought pieces ourselves before having a gallery, we realized that we were maybe picky or whatever. Maybe we wanted to have a great, that the quality of the making was really key to us. Yeah. And we realized that selling pieces to collectors, of course, it's an involvement. You're committed to do something to deliver the best you can do. And so since almost the beginning of the gallery, we decided to produce the pieces, meaning that we have people taking care of the production, paying for the development and the pieces as well. And then, of course, usually what we do is we do one or several pieces for a show, and then we sell them one by one. So yeah, when I say we produce, it's really the gallery who is taking that risk. And of course, we're doing the development is of course completely made in collaboration and very closely with the designers. Sometimes maybe with Wiki Summers that maybe we'll talk about later on with her shows. She was maybe more involved because it was her making, like the flowers by Hella that we saw. She was making the pieces, but otherwise, all the other pieces, the gallery was in charge of the production.
Okay. It's I'll just go on to some other images here. We'll maybe now speed up a little bit, Clemence, just because we have quite a few images to show still. But it occurs to me that in some way you're functioning in a kind of classic French mode, because I think of the marchands merciers from the 17th and 18th centuries, who were also organizing all these artisan workshops. And of course, the quality of the craftsmanship itself is very strongly associated with France as a leader in all of these different métiers. And so there's a way in which you're in the 21st century continuing something with centuries worth of history behind it in France. But that also prompted another question for me, which is just about the Frenchness of Galerie Kreo. Because it seems to me like you have, you already mentioned Neo 2 as a precedent. I also think of Attendant les Barbares, the gallery that existed in the 1980s and in Paris. But it seems to me that you're working in a very specific context there in Paris with your clientele, also with this European group of designers. And I wonder what you think about that, because from an American perspective, it does seem so French. And I wonder from your perspective as a French woman, whether it seems that way also.
I don't know, partly yes, partly no. I completely agree. And I think we realized it afterwards, to be completely honest, that it's true that we have a furniture history in France. And and you're completely right, Glenn, when you talk about the best 18th century galleries, they are French. Same for the 30s, same for the 50s. Yes. It's fun because it's true that it's very French, but we never thought of this before. It was really something completely, but I don't think, so in this way, yes, we can say it's very French, but I think the way we work with people is, I mean, the designers are completely international. Marc is Australian and Naoto Fukazawa is Japanese. Hella is from Netherlands.
Yeah.
We work with Italians, with French. I mean, it's not very French in the sense that it's very international to me, the way these people are working, and they are in contact with, I mean, traveling around the world all the time. Jaime the same, Jaime Ayan. So it's very, no, in this way, I don't think we're very French. Maybe in the way we treat furniture, true, that we consider it as something serious, as something that we love, so that's for sure. But it's very international to me, and actually a lot of the clientele is American.
Yeah, and in fact, you're bringing perhaps a French methodology, we could say, to a very international group, as you say. Virgil Abloh, relatively recent member of the gallery community, a fantastic example of that, and I'm sure people are very well aware of his work. I wonder if you could say a little bit about Abloh and what he represents, his association with the gallery.
Of course. I want to say that we're super happy and proud of what we did with this show called the Efflorescence Show. And I know, and it's fun that a lot of people were just like, oh, are you really doing this? And it was just like maybe seeing us like more with the Bouroullec and Newson and so on, and all we did in the past. And actually we met with Virgil, and he showed us the project that he had. I must say that we were aware of course, his recognition, huge recognition in fashion and music, but I didn't know about the architecture at the very beginning, to be honest. And when we met with him, we were stunned by the project. We immediately loved it, and it was a pleasure to develop it. He was so precise, he's so precise, so involved in every detail. And we loved it because it was very, to us, again, something with a lot of integrity, as all the designers we work with. I think if you see a Hala piece, it cannot be someone else's piece. If you see the frog or the turtle, if you see Marc's Lockheed Lounge, it cannot be another designer. You have so many pieces. I mean, you could put any word, any name, and you couldn't guess. And here, to me, it's completely Virgil Abloh, meaning that it's really about the street, of course, the street about the material, the concrete that you found outside, but as well the graffiti. But the graffiti not in a, I mean, in a very particular way. The graffiti used outside again. So that's his style, his graffiti that he is doing personally on each piece. So each piece is unique, each piece is different, and they are really different. You will see another one afterwards. And together with these concrete pieces, so the bench here, a coffee table, a large table, different pieces, some chairs, some desks as well. There were 3 mirrors, huge ones, like the one you have on the wall. It's like a door size, completely in polish still, with holes. So it's, we loved this mirror because it was just like, almost like, well, to us, a very contemporary shape, almost like a huge iPhone, gigantic iPhone shape in a sense, even if it's not the case, but it's something that you could see. The mirror can be directly on the wall or can lay down also on the floor, like a door. And you see yourself, but you don't see yourself. And as he was saying himself, the holes are also at a moment where we are always, you know, doing selfies and being on social medias all the time, that it could be also some breathe, some holes to escape to this world and to this constant selfies. So we found it so accurate, so smart, that we were really thrilled to have this show.
And that idea of efflorescence, which is the title, which refers to this idea of graffiti as something that grows across the urban landscape, also very ingenious. Okay. You've mentioned Jaime Ayan a couple of times already. Really, I think a beloved member, I could say, of the gallery community. Very, very close to you and Didier, I know. And he seems also to be a really good example of a designer who's working in lots of different kinds of space simultaneously. So would you like to say anything about Hayon specifically, or the idea of the way that your designers have these signature styles that can be applied to different purposes, perhaps?
Yes, with Jaime, I mean, again, if you look at this image, you couldn't say it's Hella or it's the Bouroullec. You see what I mean? It's really Jaime. And that's what we love, again. I must say that it's actually through Jasper Morrison, that we met with Jaime. And again, he proposed us a show that we loved because it was completely different from everything that we had been doing before, about sport. The title was Game On. And you can see the racket, you can see the ice skating day bed, and we had some fantastic pieces in the show. For the first time ever, we wanted to have graphics on the wall. We never said, I mean, nobody asked before, and we never thought of this, of course, but with Jaime, it was kind of very obvious and just like, yeah, sure. And so he was using a reference of the lines that you have in sports, you know, in this field, football or basketball or whatever, and then printed them in bright colors, primary colors on the wall. And we loved it because the scenography was very special. It is also special because the scenography is usually made by the designer himself, or at least even if it's not doing it, giving the important guidelines. So, but here was very interesting, and as Jaime is always, you know, drawing. You can't, I mean, you follow him on Instagram, and you will see that he's drawing all the time, all day long. Of course, in the other image that you showed, he drew directly on the windows. It was really beautiful, and we did this little movie of him doing the drawings on the windows. There is these beautiful drawings as well. It just finished. When we will be able to travel again, you will see that in Paris we have a lot to see. The fountains by the Bouroullec brothers on the Champs-Élysées, but now you also have the new cafeteria in the Centre Pompidou that Jaime has been doing, and you have beautiful colored glass panels inside the cafe with beautiful drawings, hand drawings that he made.
Well, we'd all like to come, that's for sure. Speaking of Jasper Morrison, here he is. Very different aesthetic. You know, I think of him as, in a way, the ultimate neo-modernist in a sense. But this idea of a kind of pure, minimal aesthetic that he brings to the table. I guess another thing that I wonder about is the degree to which, when working with somebody like Morrison, you're actually collaborating on specific pieces at all? Like how detailed do you get in conversations with someone like Morrison? Because I understand him as such a formalist. So is this more a matter of him delivering the finished product to you, or is it something that you're involved in as a very kind of nuanced conversation all the way along as the work is developing?
It's funny because it's never about a product, never. We are not producing pieces or products. The way we think the relationship with the designers is really to produce shows. And a show is when somebody has to say something. And as Jasper says as well, it's just like, I'm going to say something if I have to say something. It's not just like doing another chair, another whatever, you know, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of producing pieces, but really saying something at the moment you decide, when you have to, when you feel it's a moment and you have something strong to show. So it's never about producing products, but always producing shows, exhibitions. And an exhibition is telling a story, and each time it's different. As you've seen in these very, very different images, each person, each approach is different. And of course, with Jasper, it's super, super precise. We had in this show two types of pieces, what he called the Carrara tables, that you can see. These are very archetypal tables that you can stack on the top of each other, and they become low console, small storages. You can put books, you can put whatever. So it's very funny, and actually it's also very interesting how a piece can change when you sit in the gallery and there's nothing on it and it's completely pure and simple. And of course you can keep it like that if you want. But most of the time when it's home, you have your TV, you have books, you have flowers, you have many things on the top. So it's completely different. And I think that's also something the designers enjoy a lot, that you have your work and then it becomes something else as long as somebody is purchasing it and it becomes somebody's property. So, so the car is a perfect example of this. It's always super, super different. And then in the middle, it's maybe one of the only, not the only, but let's say the 5% of the pieces we produce that has no use, direct use, I must say. But maybe another one, the one of making you think. And that's why we produced these pieces and why we love them as well. And that's why you see on the invitation card is a kind of archaeology of the present. Jasper has always been super interested in the museography of these shapes that could imagine that you could imagine that exist since ever, and actually it's true. You can find this kind of cups or jar or plates. I mean, in the ancient time, and you can have Romans and Greek and of course it makes you think of so many pieces. And actually the one you see here, the ones you see here, they have been designed by Jasper. So it's another take, but it's like the supernormal, you know, shows that he's been doing with Naoto Fukasawa. These kind of pieces, you don't know the date really. And they are so interesting and so good that they could be from any time, and that they will be for the future as well. So so we loved also this vitrine with we call the museum pieces, and that's the name of Jasper's that's Jasper's title of this piece. So yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that idea that the object transcends its own time somehow through the integrity of the design, and yet also that museological quality that you're talking about. I think it's a really good corrective, that point you made about thinking in the holistic context of an exhibition rather than each individual object, and that's really where the conversation is. And I think we can see in these images the very strong scenographic integrity of each presentation. So it's not, well, it's obviously not like a showroom of just different furniture. It's always this kind of concerted, very considered statement about what that designer is doing right at that moment. And I feel like that's also another really important thing to ask about. And maybe I'll just go quickly through these next couple of slides, Clemence, if that's okay, showing some of the newer designers that you're working with. That you're building the narrative around each designer, but you're also building the narrative of design history in our moment at the same time through this series of events. And I guess the last question I wanted to ask you about the gallery itself in terms of dealing with contemporary material is what your reflections are on the last 20, now 21 years that you've been in this world, and how you feel like it's changed. So what are the biggest changes between when you started out and what you see now out in the design discipline?
The biggest change is maybe the relationship to the space. If you ask a young kid today about the cafe around the corner, it will have a kind of expectation about everything inside that I never had, for example, when I was a kid. I think our expectation is growing in terms of design. You want everything good. I mean, you have a phone in your hand and it's perfect and it's so easy to use. And I mean, and there's a beautiful link between the functionality, I mean, the navigation and the design itself. It's the same everywhere. So this has changed a lot for sure. Yeah. And I think it was also, so this is generally speaking, when we talk about the collectors, I think what has changed a lot is the relationship between art and design as well, meaning that for years, maybe decorative arts were not that recognized or that considered in a sense, maybe as a kind of a second thing. And I'm happy to realize that a lot of fantastic collectors, because they got in touch with these huge talents of Newson, Jongerius, Bouroullec, Jaime, and so on, could just fall in love with the pieces in the same way and wanted to have this relationship home. If you have a fantastic Mike Keeley on the wall or a Drochet or whatever, then there is something maybe strange to have something around that is not, maybe you have, now I think people are more considering the whole thing, or maybe the space as a whole, and that the design pieces are, bring so much satisfaction as well, because it's not just a table. It tells also a story, and you've learned about it, and you like the designer's approach, and you like the way it's made. So there are different ways to enter this, but this definitely has changed a lot too.
That's fascinating, because those two things that you were just describing, like the kid going into the cafe on the one hand with their phone in their hand, and the collector feeling like every aspect of their environment needs to be designed and considered. Those are like two variations of the same phenomenon in a way, like intensification of attention to the environment.
Really, yeah. And that's also the illustration of a deep trend. You see what I mean? It's not just like something that can happen and that will disappear. It's something that is part of our lives now.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a separate topic, which we could probably have a whole hour about, but to briefly say that, of course, the gallery does deal with historical design as well, archive design, whatever you would call it. And this is an amazing installation, as everyone can see, of lighting in the space. And I wonder if you could just very briefly say something about how you see that historical dimension of your activities fitting into the narratives of contemporary design that the gallery is so well known for telling.
That's really my husband's part. It's very kind saying that I'm involved. Yes, of course I'm involved, but that's really his.
Okay.
He's really mad about lighting, wrote books about it, and it's just like his passion. That's another thing we love, is to mix. We've never been just like, oh, you have to do everything. It's like in many other fields, you're not just like dressed the same way completely and so on. It's just like we always loved to mix vintage pieces with contemporary ones. And here you see a lot of, it was actually the first extensive light show that we had inside the gallery. So you don't really recognize the gallery because we build holes in order not to see the wires, of course. But there was just like only lights, especially by Gino Sarfati, my husband's hero in a sense. And so, yeah, a very interesting way of looking at fantastic design pieces, and especially the light. Because here you have a variation which is almost infinite about the light itself. So the bulb, the way it's direct and indirect, strong, very soft, but as well of the wires, of every detail that is a light is composed of. So it's that was really interesting. It was maybe that's really the key moment for Didier's collection, is really this post-war moment where everything is very free. The problem now, and that's unfortunately the case in many industrial projects, is that it's so, the specifications are so severe, are so strong, that at the end you cannot almost, I mean, you can't create anymore in a sense. And now, especially with light, it's really strong because you have to have all these crash tests and so on. So at the end, you have huge fixtures that they are not nice, and it's so you can see here that of course the creativity, they could almost do whatever they wanted. So so that's really interesting, and the colors as well, very joyful. I mean, it's the end of the war and so on. So yeah.
Yes, right. So this exuberant explosion of color and form. and of
No.
course light itself, and such a sculptural impression, that installation. Well, let's finish up just by talking about your home. We have a few images of what you were talking about earlier, really, which is that you came into this in the first place wanting to create an environment for yourselves. And there it is. So we have the amazing Bouroullec design there, Hamehayan's table. Can you say a little bit about how your domestic space relates to the gallery? And is there some way in which you're kind of prototyping or testing things out in your own environment? Or how does that work?
No, we don't. It's really, we always started with the piece. We change every 2-3 years. Of course, it's our business, so it's easier. But it's, for example, this sofa by the Bouroullec, the first time we had it in the gallery in the 13th in Paris, I was just like, okay, this is going to be home. It's so good. So at one point we need it. And again, it's like a little home in a home. My two daughters, Victoria and Clara, they've been working inside, I mean, studying and also having friends, and you can have, and you have a light and you have a shelf where you can put your books, and it's big enough, of course, like a day bed, so you can, I mean, also sleep. And it's really fantastic. So it all started with pieces. And I must say, I always have to stop my husband. So you can see Virgil, huge bench, very, very different one here. And what I was saying about mixing with contemporary art. You see a Danvaux piece of Barbara Kruger there, or Philippe Parreno Christmas tree.
That's the Danvaux there, by the way,
Exactly.
A piece of the Statue of Liberty is the concept.
Exactly. Exactly, and Jason Rhodes on the right. So it's just like the mix, and the vintage pieces, of course, because you have the Sarfati lights, like you see here, and so and even the two armchairs here. So it's it's by Garish. We like to mix everything, the art, the contemporary design, the vintage pieces. Oh, that's Didier. And it works well, and I have to stop him because he always want to put more, and at one point I have to stay stopped, but I really like them, and since the very beginning we've done that. And Didier is always saying, you know, you always have people and they want to have matchy thing, and they think a lot about decoration, and Didier is the opposite. It's just like, if a piece is good, it's gonna work, and I don't care about what's gonna be next to it. I'm a little different, I must say, but it's really a matter of falling in love with pieces and putting them together. Okay. And really go onward, because that's the thing we love also, and we see that with our collectors, is that it's really something that looks like you. It's not like sometimes people can think it's a little crazy or whatever, but it's if I visit people's home, most of the time I feel it's almost like a portrait of themselves, the way they put things, the way they choose things. And of course it can evolve, because at the very beginning we didn't have all that, and it changes, but it's it's kind of portrait.
Yeah, well, it's a very beautiful portrait, I must say. We're just about out of time. I will say that, of course, there's a publication program at the gallery, so if people are interested in learning even more about Creo and can't get to Paris to see the exhibitions or to a fair, there are these amazing books that you've published. We can see here the strong interest in lighting again. And then just to say, in conclusion, a little bit belatedly, congratulations on your 20-year anniversary. I know it's now 21 years. Yeah. And here's the team and some of the people we've been talking about. We see fellow Jongerius there, for example, in the foreground, and many of the other designers that we've talked about. And this is the gallery, the whole gallery team.
Pierre Charpin, Edouard Barber and J.S. Gilby, the front designers, Chris Cabell, Brania Dudarson, Jean-Baptiste Fastrez, Wiki Summers, of course. So yeah, that was two are missing. Marc and Konstantin couldn't be there. That was actually the party that we made for our 20th anniversary. So everybody was there. That was really a fun time.
Amazing. and quite a nice environment as well, it looks like.
But this one was in the École des Beaux-Arts in France. So,
okay. That's how you do your
with our friend Kamel Menour, who has an art gallery just nearby the gallery in Saint-Germain-des-Prés.
Okay, so we'll just have one or two questions, if that's okay, if you have time. Yeah. So we got a really nice question in advance, actually, from a student called Cyrus Fights, who asks, what is your main advice for graduate design students like me who want to start their own gallery to expose the talented work of others? Any advice about getting started in this world?
That's complicated. Well, I would say it seems obvious, but just like to be true to yourself. I'm sure that if she wants to open a gallery and is young, it's really something that she cares a lot about. And so personally, it's complicated to talk about us, but if I think about other art galleries, for example, that I'm buying from or that I like, I like the way they have their program. I like the program, the way they look at things, and I want to follow them. So be true to what you want to do, and choose the great designers to work with to develop great exhibitions. It's the way you're producing pieces really depends on the people you work with, because some people want to produce their pieces and some don't. So it's
yeah, makers versus designers, in the sense of people who want to work with other makers. We got a great set of questions here from Sanam Sudavar, who's a regular viewer, who says, you've always been avant-garde. I think we can all agree with that. There's a lot there, but one question there is I think particularly interesting, which is, do you ever work with architects? And how do you see architecture in relation to the program?
So far, we have never worked really with architects, apart from Virgil, because he's an architect. Yeah. We love architecture. We have a lot of architects visiting the gallery super frequently and very good friends. But for the moment, I think it's also a question of scale, in a sense. It is so, the time frame for an architect is very different from the one of a design piece, which is a very different one from a graphic design piece, for example. And it's true that you at least need 5 years to complete an architecture, where you would need maybe 2 years, 2 years and a half. Averagely, to produce one exhibition, it takes for us between two years and a half to 4 years. So it's another very long process. And then if you do graphic design, maybe in 2 days you do things, you see what I mean? It's just like, especially in digital area. Yeah. But so I think the architects maybe need to be so focused on their own projects that it's maybe difficult to spare so much time on a design one. So mainly what you see and what I see are projects that are made inside an architecture that they're doing. So maybe they will do a bench, or they will do a table, or they will do, but mostly in situ pieces. But I'm not saying that we don't want to do it. Maybe one day we are going to do it. It's really the question of the enthusiasm of developing things, of really wanting, willing to do things. And I think this is key. If you feel the energy, the love of the thing, it's fantastic. You really need to have it. It's not about doing something because it's cool. You know, we have a lot of requests by people, by fashion people, by many people in many fields, movie and so on, wanted to do some design show. And we were always we are always looking at it. Well, you know, we take it seriously. It's not just like fun and we do a capsule thing and bye bye and I don't care. It's just like, so when you realize this, I think maybe for architects it's exactly the same, and as their core activity is the architecture, it's difficult to spare time to develop a serious design project. But yeah. I don't say no. Maybe we are going to do it one day. Why not? I would love that.
Never say never. Okay, we'll just finish off with a couple of questions from Mark Benda, who of course is watching. And I have to say, Mark never asks questions, but he does have a couple for you. So the first one is, what do you see as the public role of a design gallery? So what is our mission to educate, and how can we shape public expectations about today's designers and expectations from them as well?
Well, first of all, I should have done this before. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me, because it's really through friend Benda that you're doing these dialogues. The public role has always been very important to us. The gallery is very open. The public is coming, and a lot of people are coming inside the gallery. A lot of students, a lot of photographers, a lot of, very various people, and we actually welcome them. It's if somebody is asking questions, we are always there to answer. We have this, we produce text as well. I didn't mention it, but we have curators and people working, as I know you're doing yourself, Glenn, on some shows as well. It's important to also give the perspective, give the background of the show, so that you get the whole picture, but as well the whole satisfaction about it. So yes, this is very important to us, and we try. We are not only of course we are doing exclusive things, but as I was saying, we never saw our gallery as something opposed to real life, or to all the designers we work with. They work for industry, for mass projects. And we love that. There's no competition. It's really, for me, complementary. And the same way, it's not because you can't maybe afford to buy something inside the gallery. Sometimes we do things at the gallery in small, like we did with the Bouroullec brothers, for example, for the lianas. There was a first life in leather with very complex and beautiful and precise pieces. And then there was another edition in plastic by Floss, and people could afford it. So it's just like, or maybe they couldn't, and they would buy then another one. But it's important. There's no, to me, it's a whole story. It's just like, it opens your eyes also to see things. It's not because the way you see things has an impact on your life. And when you're first in contact with design pieces or drawings, or it can really makes you think. And I think, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, it's not about ownership necessarily. It's about the idea being put into the world. Absolutely, yeah. Okay, last question also from Mark. And it's a really nice last question. What do you think the legacy of Creo will be? And he suggests, he points out that there's this crop of new galleries around the world, including in markets like Asia. So it's obviously a very dynamic situation. But he says, as a pioneer, what do you think your contribution will be when archaeologists dig out these artifacts in years to come? Good question, Mark.
Mark, you have to do one, and I will ask you questions as well. Huh? I honestly, I don't know. I think we, what I would like is maybe to see that people could see beautiful shows and pieces that will last. You know, it's fun, Glenn, when we were looking at some pieces, some have more than 20 years, and I feel they could have been created yesterday. Yeah. Maybe I could do the show again tomorrow, and there's no wrinkle about it, and that's cool.
Yeah. It reminds me of what you were saying about Jasper Morrison. These things kind of lifting out of their time and achieving a kind of different
And,
register.
and many of these pieces, they also belong to museum collections.
Yeah.
And another point that is very important is that all the designers' works belong to great collections, not only private collections and private collectors, but public collections and museum collections. And they are there not because they are just nice, not because it's a nice drawing, but really because they have a content. And I know I've been thinking that earlier, but it's the content is key. Is really what drives you and what makes a piece interesting from another. When we were talking about the lighting by Sarfati, he was not thinking about, you know, doing a nice lampshade with a nice color and a decorative something. It was just like something about the light. And so, of course, 50, 70 years after that, we still have these pieces, and they are so relevant. They are so smart. And so, and of course, there's also a very glamorous part of this smart aspect of the pieces. I can fall in love with this as well. Not only the shape, not only the way it's done, but also the way somebody has thought about it. So the content of the piece is really key.
The concept and the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we'll have to leave it there. I have to say this has been such a great conversation and such a unique opportunity too, because sort of thinking about Marc's last question, it occurs to me that gallerists are often behind the scenes and we don't always hear from them directly. And also that because of the way the galleries affect everything around them, it might be that people listening today didn't know very much about Galerie Kreo, even though the design world that they inhabit has been deeply impacted by what you've been doing. So it's really great to kind of have this deep dive into your history and to your thinking and the way that you work. And it's been really clarifying and fascinating and also really fun to talk to you, I must say. I will also just make the brief announcement, as we always do, that there's another Design and Dialogue coming up, always another one. And this Friday, Stephen Burks, my co-host, will be welcoming Moss architects Hilary Sample and Michael Meredith onto the program to talk about their work in domestic architecture. Not something we've actually talked very much about in the course of the series so far, but also their work as educators and exhibition makers. So come back on Friday for that. And Clemence, thanks again. It's been a really super experience speaking with you today.
No, thank you a lot, and congratulations for what you're doing, Glenn. Thank you very much.
75 episodes and counting. It was great you could be here for it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much. Thanks for joining in.
Bye-bye.